Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We're talking about the impact of Brexit, not just on Britain, but on Europe and the world, in the company of Matthew Sinclair of public relations firm Westbourne Communications. He's a former chief executive of the Taxpayers Alliance, voted to leave, a man who's in favor of remain. Sunny Kapoor, who is in Oslo, the managing director of economic and public policy think tank Redefine. And welcome back as well to Franck Marguin, who heads the Paris Region Economic Development Agency and is a Paris area regional councillor for the Conservatives. Franck Marguin, we have a two-horse race now to be the next Prime Minister of Great Britain. There is somebody who voted Remain, that's the Home Secretary, Theresa May, Energy Minister, Andrea Leadsom. She distinguished herself from the rest of the field when she launched her campaign to take over the Conservative Party. She voted Leave, and she promised to start the clock quickly on Brexit. She now seems to be toning that down, all the while promising a brighter future outside the EU.
When we come to see the post-EU figures, I expect to see continued growth. I expect to see people buying goods, going about their normal business, buying their homes, and yes, enjoying a pay rise.
Enjoying a pay rise, that's been something that's been key because ordinary citizens haven't seen a pay rise in many countries for a long time. Will they enjoy a pay rise after Brexit?
They might enjoy the pay rise because they might have a lot of inflation with a very low currency, which apparently they might have, a higher pay, which means they will buy less in the world international of, pricing. So I'm not convinced that pay rise is I would say
an increase of spending power.
Exactly, an increasing of spending power. So, you should not listen to politicians who have now to say something which has to be reassuring to the population. They are not going to lead a campaign by, letting them more afraid than they could be. My understanding is that they will have to go, obviously, because I believe in democracy and, they've decided to go. And I would agree that's the way they will go. It's an important subject, but my belief is that, they have decided to leave the family because we are all talking about, low currency, maybe more pay, maybe less stock exchange index, return. What I also wish to share is that they have left the project. When we built Europe, with Mr. Monet and Mr. de Gasperi, we thought we would create a world where the family would live together. And what I liked about the British, that they were like, uncle or aunt, a bit more difficult, a bit more, particular.
Kept the rest of the family honest.
But exactly, and they were, adding their, work to the construction. And what I feel today, that they have decided to leave the family. And I'm obviously sorry to think that we, as a family, were not attractive enough to keep them. But now I feel also they are a bit in the world of this individualism where, when something doesn't work well, you prefer to leave than trying to improve it. And that's where I would disagree with my colleague here from what he said. Yes, it didn't work well. Yes, we had a lot to improve. Yes, we would, but with the help of everybody, we would have made a world better. So now, they might be better, they might be, worse. I don't know, and I wish them well. But the only thing I must tell that they don't want to live in the family, and that's a shame.
That's a shame, you're saying. Sunny Kapoor, let me ask you. We saw George Osborne, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, this Thursday. He's been meeting with senior Chinese official. In Hong Kong, the UK Trade Minister also had meetings. He promised, quote, a second golden age of trade and investment for Britain. He's saying, the message out of London right now is there are plenty of opportunities out there.
He's trying to put a brave face. This is a man who had prime ministerial ambitions, but who didn't even put his hat in the ring. He has been relegated to the chapter of losers in history, and sadly, he's trying to make a brave face. And as to the claim by the candidates for the next prime minister about the UK getting people getting higher wages, that belongs to the same category of lies and false promises as funding the NHS with the 350 million pounds that the UK gives to the EU every week, which is a total lie. I mean, the facts on the ground are very clear. The UK is almost 99.9% going to enter a recession. We have lost enormous purchasing power. We are now smaller than France again in terms of economic weight in the world. We are tiny and shrinking as compared to China. Any EU-China free trade agreement would have balanced the interest of both EU countries as well as China much better. Any UK-China deal, which may happen, will be very asymmetric, with the terms of trade completely biased against us. We are a pygmy, a shrinking economy, which is not even mid-sized nowadays in the world, in a world which is changing very quickly. Together, as part of the single market, as part of the EU, 500 million consumers, this largest economic area in the world, we had weight, and we have willingly shot ourselves in the foot.
Matthew Sinclair, how do you strike a good trade deal with China?
Today's UK isn't even mid-size is just evidently foolish. I mean, that's just. I mean, if the UK isn't even mid-size, you wonder what a mid-size economy is. I mean, I think what we've really got to cool some of the rhetoric here, and that's why I think. Look, I don't think that the situation is as sunny as Andrea Leadsom set out, but I don't think it's nearly as grim as Sony set out, and it doesn't need to be. And if we get locked into this rhetoric of impending doom, we might miss an opportunity to get this as right as we can. Not saying that that's not going to mean uncertainty in the short term, which has real consequences, but that we can move to a relationship where we can work better with our European partners. We might have moved out of the family home, but we're still a part of the family, and we can engage and trade freely together because British people value the goods and services they buy from Europe. Europeans value the goods and services they buy from the UK. We have the established status quo of free trade. We need to agree to continue that on terms that work for both sides. If we do that, while the UK the UK is then able to take the steps it needs to take to recover the sovereignty that it needs, and at the same time the EU gets the ability to move forward without that awkward uncle constantly holding the whole party up, then both sides can be better off. And in the long term, that means a pay rise. It's not easy now, but if we work at that, rather than just coming up with one, frightening projection after another, when necessarily that's entirely dependent on your policy scenario. It's entirely dependent on what deal the UK does with the EU, what deal the UK does with other countries. And I think it's not helping anyone to just keep going down this road of ever greater predictions of catastrophe, and it certainly doesn't change minds. I mean, we saw that.
All right, let me ask about this. Let me ask Franck Marguin about this, because there is a point there. At the end of the day, you can be bitter about it. You can say the British voted the wrong way or whatever.
No,
but,
I'm not saying that.
But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, it's in neither side's interest to be at war. So there will be deals, and there will be deals that will that they'll try to make those deals win-win.
Because I believe in human and wiseness, and yes, we will find a new way of dealing. Yes, England is not a boat; it will be always close to Europe. So that's not the issue. The issue is how do you do business and how do you live together? Do you do because you are in common, and yes, it's more difficult, so you choose the difficult way, or you just talk about, how much can I buy, how much can I do? And my understanding is really the inverse of my colleague here, that the British have voted against liberalism. The British has always tried to expand the common market, to do free trade. And what I've understand, maybe I'm wrong, but what I understand in the British vote, that it's cities against rural countries, it's Scotland against part of north of England. My belief that those who have most suffered have voted against Europe, and who have most suffered are those who have not benefited from the single market and from the liberalism, imposed by the British all the time. So there is an argument which I could not share. They would have voted against Europe, because they are absolutely convinced of free trade. They are convinced they will be wealthier because, they believe in the world economy. Yes, but that's not what the population has said. The population has said, we don't want immigrants, we don't want liberalism, and this guy is telling me, we will have more free trade. So there is incoherence somewhere, in my understanding. It's
all right,
just
let me ask about this. Let me ask.
Look at the UK. Look at it revealed preferences. Look at what the UK keeps doing. It keeps electing relatively free trade governments. It's been doing that for generations upon generations. The UK
30% of the
settlement has been relatively
population, your
pro-free trade.
system of vote
yes,
is
there are
not the
people.
majority. Please don't say that. It's a lie. You could not say that. You could have a majority in your parliament with 33% of the vote. Don't say that the majority of the population has voted.
Yeah, and
Come on.
And our political system is designed to choose the coalition, the biggest electoral coalition which can assemble behind a programme, and that has consistently been a liberal one, and it will continue to be. And I just want to correct this, because it would be dangerous if people took the conclusion that Britain's turning against liberalism.
No.
I'm afraid I just can't agree with Matthew on this. I mean, what is very clear is that the Remain side has a coherent pro-liberalism, pro-EU, pro-immigration argument, but the Leave side is a very, very mixed constituency, where some of the people have voted against the EU because they thought it a socialist plot. There are others who voted against the EU because they thought it a capitalist plot. There are others who have voted against it primarily because they don't like immigrants. And to think that people who don't like white Christian Poles would be comfortable with the idea that some are talking about getting millions of more talented Indian professionals in IT, people who are not comfortable with trade deals with the EU would be happy and comfortable with Chinese companies coming over and buying the UK. I mean, I'm sorry, but that is just not true.
Just do the arithmetic on what is a governing coalition in the UK. A governing coalition in the UK is those who voted Leave. Yeah. Those who voted Leave starting from economic liberal starting point, those who voted Remain start from an economic liberal starting point. That will continue to be the governing coalition in the UK as it has been. There's nothing changed in the UK overnight.
No, people who voted Leave did not start from economic liberalism. I'm sorry, they want UK
who voted Leave are not all the same. I thought you were acknowledging that, right?
Yes,
as you
exactly,
said,
but
people voted Leave for a lot of different reasons, but it didn't settle the government, right? It wasn't an election, and people voted Leave for many different reasons. And people who vote Remain will still have a vote, so our government will be chosen by the same people who chose the last government. There's not going to be a dramatic turn towards liberalism. I just think it's dangerous if this idea gets out there, because there is a space to maintain free trade.
Yes, and the only way that is going to happen is if we strike a Norway-like deal, which means free movement of people in exchange for access to the single market, which basically means we've shot ourselves in the foot, because here we are, we have a seat around the table, we have a disproportionate influence in the EU, we have free movement of people and single market, and from that we are going to go down to the Norwegian model, where we end up paying more or less the same amount. We have to still take all the regulations, we still have to accept free movement of people, but we have no influence whatsoever. And to think that the Leave constituency would accept a further loss in sovereignty is unthinkable. So I'm sorry, but it's very clear choice. Either maintaining the status quo, or we are going to have an anti-liberal stance where we lose access to the single market. This is a binary, clear choice.
No, it's not. Look at the reality of the situation, which is that the EEA would be a considerable recovery of sovereignty in many areas. Yes, some loss of influence in return, and it would maintain free trade. Equally, we could say that the EEA is not the right deal for either side with respect to the UK, and we could try and do some kind of different deal. But if cool heads prevail on all sides, why should we not? You can keep shouting over me, right? But if cool heads prevail on all sides, why should we not do a deal which maintains free trade, which allows the UK government some measure of control over migration? It doesn't need to be some dramatic change, but it needs to reassure the British public that their government is to some extent in charge. If we can't do that deal, it's a failure of imagination of those of us engaged in the political process. If we sit there and rage against the result of a referendum, we'll achieve much less than if we ask, what is the governing coalition on both sides that can do a reasonable deal?
All right,
It's a non-binding referendum, and the majority of the parliament is against leaving the EU, and public opinion has shifted.
All right, we'll get back to that point. A couple of things I want to go through fast before we run out of time. First of all, the point made by Matthew Sinclair in part one that he doesn't see Paris as replacing London as Europe's financial capital. We put a poll on the hashtag F24 debate. So far, 45% think Paris can do it. 55% think they can't. Now, we should add to that the Brexit move. You could spot the difference between the current leader, socialist candidate back in 2012, François Hollande, and his prime minister speaking Wednesday.
My real enemy does not have a name, a face, or a party. He'll never run for office. He will never be elected. And yet, he does govern. My enemy is the world of finance.
We want to build, all together, the financial capital of the future and make Paris the capital of smart finance.
All right, I know where Franck Margin and Matthew Sinclair stand on this. Let me ask Sunny Kapoor, could Paris be the new financial center?
The writing's on the wall for London, unless there's a reversal of the vote very soon, which is there'll be a gradual decline. It will not be sudden. Some businesses, such as clearing of euro transactions, is going to move suddenly back to the continent, and business will flow to Paris, to Frankfurt, to Luxembourg, to Dublin. I don't think any one center is going to be as dominant as London will be, but the direction is very clear. London will decline, and all these four centers will gain significant amount of business from London.
So look, I've been speaking to people what they've been telling me, and what you can see in most surveys. The France 24 survey came to a different result. Most surveys as well is that Frankfurt would probably be the most likely destination if there's any relocation. Dublin, somewhat after that, and Paris a long way behind. Because frankly, people remember that Hollande speech, and they know that they're one election away from being demonised again. And I think that it's, in the end, the people who might gain most will be those outside Europe. Firstly, other international financial centres, because Frankfurt doesn't have the scale to recreate London, but also other industrial firms. We've got to remember, this isn't just about finance. If you're an industrial firm in France or Germany or wherever, you depend on a whole suite of financial services. If you lose access to if you lose access to those at the price you're paying now for the quality you're getting now, you're going to be worse off with respect to your competitors in the United States, in East Asia. And that's why I think there's such an incentive for everyone to come to a reasonable deal here if they can see it. It's so important people see that no one gains by cutting that trade. And so what we all need to do is work to come to a reasonable deal which allows the UK to take the steps towards sovereignty it needs, which doesn't hurt anyone else, while maintaining the trade which benefits everyone.
All right, but it'll be difficult sell to be Europe's financial capital if they're not inside the EU. Lots of reactions. This one on Facebook. Paris is going to have to fight Frankfurt for the new head of the financial capital. Richard Platt on Facebook. I'd better start brushing up on my French. Franck Margin.
But, I mean, that's just, it's not understandable, these kind of words. I just want to remind that, Europe has a very long tradition of financial center. They used to be in Florence, they were in Switzerland, they were, obviously in London. Come on, no one could pretend they will keep a knowledge. And I think, by leaving Europe, they will obviously be more fragilized, and many people would obviously need as a tool, to clear the euro, to come to the continent. And I'm not pretending that, one place will be as good as, or one place will be as big as, but it's true fact that people will need to relocate. So I don't want to participate in a debate where such lies are just said, We are not questioning the quality of the London place. We are just saying that because they want to leave, they will lose some businesses. Now, how much, nobody knows. Is Paris well placed to welcome that? Yes, we are. Is Frankfurt well placed? Yes, certainly. But you have also Madrid, you have also Amsterdam. So now our job is obviously to become more attractive, to reform our system. But I don't see how come you could say that no one could do finance. We had very strong bank, and we still have very strong bank, like BNP, Société Générale in France. So come on, it's not really not
all right.
true.
So there's so much more we could talk about. Unfortunately, the clock running down. Most notably, and I'll just put this as a final question to you, Sunny Kapoor. We saw with this week the announcement out of Brussels that a free trade agreement with Canada will now be ratified by all 28 members. It was something that the Germans and the French want, thus making it more difficult. The Canadian trade minister back in April said, if the EU can't do a deal with Canada, who can we do a deal with? I mean, really, those are the words of Christian Freeland. Is it going to be harder going forth to make free trade deals?
For the EU or for the UK?
For everyone.
No, I don't think it is going to be any harder. Capacity has been building up over time. There's more experience. There's big US-sponsored multilateral trade deals in the process. What is getting more complicated is that the scope of trade deals has become ever broader. So they now include financial services, they include non-tariff issues, they include regulatory issues, etc. So I think that trade deals are getting more and more complex and cumbersome. On the other hand, experience and the incentive and the recognition of the benefits of free trade are also getting better. What can throw a spanner in the works is the kind of populist backlash that we saw in the United Kingdom, the kind of populist backlash that Donald Trump presents, the kind of populist backlash that Marine Le Pen presents. And I think that politics is the important thing to watch out for. The general trend is the support for free trade in the OECD, in the rich world, in the EU is declining. The support for free trade in emerging economies in developing countries is either rising or remains as high as ever.
Right,
that
so
asymmetry is going to be a serious problem.
It's a development we'll continue to follow. Sunny Kapoor, many thanks for joining us today from Oslo. I want to thank Matthew Sinclair in London. Franck Marguin, stay with us.
Welcome to Paris.
Our Media Watch segment is next. And we say hello to Emma James.
Hi there.
Heated discussion. And what's interesting is we were talking about earlier, the Conservative race narrowed down to 2 finalists and all this uncertainty, and we won't know the winner until September.
No, absolutely. It does seem a little strange, doesn't it? David Cameron has set out his stall and says he'll be off. But again, the uncertainty continues as if we didn't already have enough with this whole Brexit scenario. As you say, the leadership race down to 2 people, 2 women, fighting over the legacy of Margaret Thatcher. This cartoon from The Telegraph by Adams has the words handbag at dawn, and you can see the initials MT there for Margaret Thatcher, of course, the UK's first female Prime Minister, and one of these 2 women, Theresa May or Andrea Leadsom, will be the second. But there is a lot of pessimism out there about this, and it doesn't seem to matter whether it's men or women. People don't seem to be very happy about this particular choice. David Schneider, British comedian, says, brilliant news, Michael Gove will not be Prime Minister. Terrible news, Theresa May or Andrea Leadsom will be. Dan Rabalato says, Cameron out, then Boris steps down, now Gove out, Leadsom is in with a chance. This is like a Russian doll, each doll littler and nastier.
Oh dear.
Pretty damning stuff. Now, Tom Newton-Dunn, who is the political editor of The Sun newspaper, says what senior Tories now fear is that May got 200 MPs votes today, but the members will elect Leadsom. Tories then have Labour's Corbyn problem because he, of course, very popular with the core Labour
rank and
voters.
file, yeah.
Absolutely, but not across the board and probably not electable, frankly. So interesting things going on. One person who is, or one group of people who are optimistic right now, the Leadsom campaign team themselves. This image was captured on one of the campaign managers as he was leaving a press conference today. Project the Winner. Written on the file there. Absolutely. Sam Coates of The Times says as they walked out the door, one person from Team Gove said, enjoy Prime Minister Leadsom. It'll give you lots to write about. So clearly they feel that she is likely to be the one to really win the popular votes when it goes to the people of the ordinary members of the Conservative Party. Matt Haig, the British author, says Andrea Leadsom is a big fan of fox hunting, but not the right for gay people to marry. She also likes Brexit, ticks all the boxes, lovely, showing that really she is going to appeal to the rank and file followers of the Conservative Party. Now, of course, she is in a little trouble herself for having allegedly tinkered with her CV. She denies it, of course, but it isn't stopping the jokes on the internet. If we take a look at some of these, Andrea Leadsom says criticism of her CV is ridiculous and she didn't have to put up with this nonsense when she was an astronaut. And the Huffington Post has also created a fake CV for Andrea Leadsom in which it says she was born in a stable in Bethlehem on the 25th of December, that she discovered split the atom, and also went on in 1966 to win the winning World Cup, score the winning World Cup goal.
There was a U.S. vice president who discovered the internet, but thank you for that. Emma James, we want to thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.